My husband and I had a heated argument. It got bad. In my anger, I told him I was going to stay at my sister's house to cool off. I got in the car, intended to do just that. But as I passed the teacher's house, something inside me made me stop. I parked, walked to his door, and knocked. 22 years. That's how long my husband and I had been married. We have 2 kids. One is 15, and the other just turned 18. By all appearances, we had a happy life, or at least I thought we did. Looking back, I never imagined I'd do what I did, or that I'd be sharing it with anyone. But here I am. I'm human, with my own desires. My husband and I had been together for a long time, 5 years of dating before we tied the knot. We built a good family, one anyone would envy. But lately, something had been missing. My husband had retired as a construction worker. Meanwhile, I handled everything related to our kids, schooling, parent-teacher conferences, assignments, you name it. My husband would take the boys fishing or on little outings, but he stayed out of the logistics of their lives. It all started one day when my youngest son's school called about a minor issue. I went in, sorted it out, and just as I was leaving, I saw him, the math teacher. He was magnetic, handsome in a way that made me feel a spark I hadn't felt in years. For days, I couldn't get him out of my head. The next time I was at the school, I mustered the courage to talk to him. He was kind, approachable, and as fate would have it, he lived nearby, right in our neighborhood. At first, it felt innocent. We chatted here and there, but then I didn't even know why I was doing it. He opened the door, surprised, but invited me in. We talked for hours. I told him about the fight, and he told me about his divorce and his kids, who lived in another city. At some point, I kissed him. He hesitated, clearly shocked, but then kissed me back. What followed felt perfect. That night, for the first time, I betrayed my husband and my family. The next morning, he suggested breakfast, and I agreed. Before that, though, we showered together. It happened again, this time without hesitation, without guilt. When I got home later, the house was quiet. My kids were at school, and my husband was out. The silence was crushing. I vowed I'd never do it again. But then, 5 days later, as I sat at the dinner table with my family, my phone buzzed. It was him. My heart raced. No one noticed the message, but I couldn't resist. The next day, I made an excuse to meet him again. It became a routine, a secret life I couldn't stop living. It felt so good, and with each meeting, the guilt seemed to fade, until it all came crashing down. My husband had been talking to my brother-in-law. During their conversation, he casually mentioned our argument and that I had supposedly stayed at my sister's house. That's when the first lie unraveled. My husband confronted me that night. He asked where I'd been. I told him I'd stayed at my sister's, but he'd already spoken to her. He knew. I was trapped. In that moment, I admitted everything. I told him who it was with, and I'll never forget the look on his face. My husband, who had been born and raised in this neighborhood, whose family was loved and respected here, was crushed. Word spread quickly. I'll never forget the look on his face. My husband, who'd been born and raised in this neighborhood, whose family was loved and respected here, was crushed. Word spread quickly, and soon the entire neighborhood knew. I had broken something that could never be repaired. The shame, the guilt, it was overwhelming. But it was too late. There was no turning back.